This is Learning to Dad.
I'm a cool dad. That's my thing.
With Tyler Ross.
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
I'm going to have fun, and you're going to have fun.
Well, I'm in Charlotte right now at my office. I live in Salisbury, North Carolina, which is right outside, about 30 minutes from downtown Charlotte.
Okay, great. And what is it? Well, hi everybody. We're recording now. Donald Grothoff, is that, or Grothoff? Would you pronounce it for me?
Grothoff. It's Donald, Don Grothoff.
Don Grothoff. Coming from Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm about an hour outside of D.C. Warrenton, Virginia is where I am. I got some good friends that live in Charlotte. Don't get to see them nearly enough. But yeah, what is it that you do in Charlotte?
Well, I have a practice. I am an EFT. I don't know if you're familiar with tapping or emotional freedom techniques, tapping.
Maybe in concept, but not by that name. I'd love for you to tell me about it.
Well, it's a process for reducing anxiety, stress, anxiety. It's an energy process to lower fight or flight, to bring down anxiety, work through processes. I have a practice. Basically, I can call myself a coach because it's a alternative practice. It's not licensed, and my practice kind of has three folds to it. I started out being an individual practitioner, a coach basically, and working with individuals, and slowly morphed into working with parents. And so I still have my individual practice. I also, in fact, the office I'm at right now is a naturopathic doctor. I am the mindset coach at his practice, helping patients that are going through his treatment process. He's got a 4 to 6 month treatment process he works with patients on, and I help them as they're going through the program to get past anything that might be blocking them, whether it's a trauma from the past, anxiety, negative self-talk, anything that might be going on here that's blocking them from getting through his program, getting through the treatment, getting the healing process that they need. That's and I work with them on a one-on-one basis. And then the third part of that is I take this into and work with my wife. We have a practice where we work with parents that are dealing with aging parent, with an aging loved one. We deal with the sandwich generation. It's those that's where our emphasis is, where the parents that are both sandwiched between raising kids but also taking care of an aging parent or an aging loved one, relative, whatever it might be, because that's where one of the places we are is there. We're still got two kids at home while we're also taking care of my father-in-law, who has Parkinson's and dementia and a lot of stuff. So, I started out in this because of I have two children that have severe OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and they took us through a journey. I always kind of say a journey through hell and back. 2 times. So my middle child went through it first, and like I said, it was a rough journey. And I had been doing the tapping process. It's kind of a funky process, kind of similar to acupuncture in its process. I was doing that beforehand for myself, for some family issues that I was going through, and then, like I said, we started on this OCD journey, which was so challenging and so horrific. And we were using the tapping process for the family to just bring down some of the anxiety, because OCD is a very high anxiety process anyway. And we were using it My wife and I were both using it to help control, kind of keep our family from going off the chart. And in the middle of all of that, I had a massive heart attack, and so the business I was doing went away basically because I couldn't keep up with it, and I decided to go into get full training, get my certificate in it, and start the practice. And like I say, it's just morphed and morphed and morphed throughout that time to a point where now, like I say, we're working more with we started out working, my wife and I started working with kids, parents dealing with kid stuff, and we've morphed it and added on to dealing with the aging parent because we morphed into it in our life. So that was a very long answer for a short question. I hope that wasn't too long or too.
No, that creates a lot of context, and I think definitely not alone in the sense of the sandwich generation and the sense of having kids that had genuine challenges as a parent to contend with, and then as a result adjusting your professional life to more align and integrate with your personal life so that one kind of feeds the other and helps the other. But quickly, briefly, could you tell me what tapping is for those listening and not watching? When you said tapping, you
Sure.
tapped your forehead, tap the side of your head. What's tapping look like, and what's it do?
Well, let me give you an analogy that I tell my clients and patients that I work with. The best way, because it's an energy process. So if you think about the place where you live, whether it's a house or apartment, whatever it is, it has energy coming into it. What's used to be called electricity, now it's now considered as energy, which is true. And it comes in usually through a big wire that's either above or down below underground, and that energy or that electricity has to be distributed out to all the different electrical things in the house, the computer, air conditioner, lights, etc. And it's done through the wires that are in the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our body is very similar in process to that. We are energy beings. 95 to 98% of what goes on up here is electrical, or really frequencies that are being zapped across with messages on them. And so, I'll tell you, as you sit where you are and I'm sitting here, I have energy flowing through me, you have energy flowing through you. It too has to be distributed out because the cells need it, the organs need it, the brain everywhere needs that energy. So within us we have what I call them invisible wires, but they're called meridians, pathways of that energy that help distribute it out to all those different places. And what happens when we get into a negative place, we get into a trauma, illness can even do it, those pathways get messed up. They get out of vibration, basically. So in acupuncture, they put needles all along those pathways. They have like 350 positions for those needles to go into, to really bring those pathways back into alignment, back into good vibration. Because when they're out of sync, when they're out of vibration, they're kicking fight or flight in. I don't know if you're familiar with what fight or flight is.
Sure.
But it's a natural process, really. Anxiety is really a natural process for us to protect us. I think it comes from the days of cavemen, probably, when we had to be weary of predators that might kill us, eat us, whatever. And so that fight or flight was what came into process to kick into when we had to do a real fight. We had to do that battle, or we had to run, or we had to freeze like a statue so the thing would just ignore us. Mm-hmm. And so that when we get those pathways out of vibration, it kicks us into that fight or flight. And so we have to get that fight or flight down, because it's causing chemicals to happen in our body that are made to strengthen our body for when we have to fight that thing. and it also shuts down parts of our brain so that it puts all the power to, the fight or the battle. And so what we're doing in the tapping process, instead of the needles like the acupuncture, we're tapping on the end points of those different pathways, and there's a pattern to it. It's basically kind of goes in a pattern of under the arm, then top of the head, and that helps bring down the fight or flight. And then what we do, we add to it, we verbalize the negative stuff, the negative thoughts, the negative ideas, feelings, etc. So it's kind of a funky process, but what we have found over time, the problem that's going on now with us is that we're kicking into fight or flight while we sit at an office worried about the quarterly report that's due, or we're at school with kids getting ready to have to take a test, and they're stressing over it. And so we're not taking physical action to use up the chemicals that are pumping in our body. And so they become toxic to us. And things are shut down up here. Two big things are shut down in our mind. The upper thinking parts of the brain get kind of hampered or shut down. And the immune system, because it doesn't need those for a physical, real fight. But we're not going through that in sitting at home worried about the kids or frustrated or stressed over something that's not really a physical battle. So we have to get past that. And I'm sorry.
No, that all makes great sense to me. I think it's probably underappreciated the role that these things play, because everything has an energy, everything has a vibration. Just when somebody walks in a room, they can change the entire feeling of that room, positive or negative, and that's always the way I describe it to somebody. It's like you don't even have to see them walk in the room. When that person walks in, it's either lighter or heavier right away. And then other people have different sensitivities to it. So the people that I know that do kinds of energy work or acupuncture, acupressure, Reiki, and the like some people see it, some people feel it, some people just know it's there. When you're working with somebody, how does the energy communicate with you? Do you see it, feel it, or just simply know that it's there?
No, I'm fairly intuitive, but I don't work on. I can sense their energy. I guess I'm trying, but we work on on the verbalization of it, and what I tend to do is talk them through what the thought process is. So, any kind of thing that's happening to you usually starts with some kind of feeling or thought, and so when a patient sits down in front of me or a client sits down in front of me, I explain just like I did there, to let them know what this is about, and how important it is to change that. And then we just basically start talking about where are they finding their stress at? Where do they get their anxiety from? And then I ask them, give me a scenario, something that, a time when that actually happened and you start feeling the anxiety starting to come up. And when they tell me the scenario, well, it's something my husband did or my kids did, what I ask them for is, what is the first thought that comes to their mind when they feel that anxiety start to come up? And we start from that process then. And what I'm doing with them is digging into the thought process and then what's underlying it. I kind of talk to them about two different types of thought process or I tend to call them messages that we may have gotten from our childhood or something like that. And I find there's two types of messages that we kind of work on. There's surface message that, I really screwed up that report at work, and that gives them anxiety with that thought. And I just dig into it. So if that happens, then what? And I dig and dig and dig and dig until I get to a place of what I call the root message, or I call it also the I message. You know, it may come down to a place of, and the ones I usually get are, I'm failing, I'm not good enough, I deserve better, I should be in a better place, or things like that. Those are the messages that I think really trigger our anxiety. And we work through them. We don't try to put a positive on top of it. We try to work through it and get that anxiety down off of it so that we can clear that message.
So those 4 or 5 things that you listed, is there, maybe you call that self-talk for the sake of simple explanation, is there a replacement that you're looking for there? Like once you kind of dig down to that root, instead of saying I'm a failure, you think you replace that with another kind of foundational thought?
Well, the first thing that we try to do is get it down off the chart. When we go on we tend to look at a 1 to 10 scale of how strong is that anxiety or that trigger for you. Is it popping you up to an 8 or a 10, top of the list? And it's just, we don't really, at that point, we want to work on the negative and just keep working through it versus trying to because if I tried to put a positive or on it when it's at a 10, the mind would just blow up. It's like, are you kidding me? No, you're not okay. And so we don't want to do that because it kind of ruins that positive. Um, and I found this through my own process. I've been doing this for 12 years now. If I try to put a positive on it, the mind just blows it up and goes, no way that you're okay, or no way that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
And if I blow it up there and I try to put a positive up there and I work them down and I get them down to a 2 or 3 or 2 or somewhere lower anyway, and I try to use that again, which is that's when we try to put we call it reframing, but that's when we try to put the positive or the other side of it into it when he gets down below like a 4 or 3. If I try to use that one I already used at 10, when it's down to a 3 or a 2, the mind goes, I told you once that doesn't work.
Okay.
It kind of, it is that, I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, I'm following you. So what
That's what I'm.
What career path were you on prior to transitioning into the work you're doing now?
I almost don't like to mention it because it's not it. I don't have a psychology degree or anything like that. Before that, I've been through a lot of different stuff. I had my own business where I was doing web design and web marketing and all of that. And before that, I was in sales, and so it was nothing in the mind, psychological field at all. I got into it kind of for myself, and as I worked with the lady that I worked with, she actually lives here in Charlotte, is one of the masters of it. She was in the master's she actually helped develop the master's program with Gary Craig, who started EFT. And all through the time I was doing it with her, working through some issues for myself, she kept saying to me, I think you'd really be good at this. Have you thought about doing this? And I put it off in the back of my mind, say, oh yeah, someday maybe, and I kind of thought of it as almost like a hobby, I would do it. And then I got into it like I said, started getting into this with my kids, and it was really working and helping and doing a lot of changes for ourselves and for the kids. And then, like I said, I was in the middle of the web design. Had moved into web marketing and SEO and all that kind of stuff, and I really was getting burnt out on it. I always said if one more person came to me with his About Us page of what he wanted to put on his website, I was going to shoot him or something, because it was just, they'd come in with a stack of stuff to put on a website and expect you to do it for a dime, and so I was getting kind of burnt out on it, and then the heart attack happened. And that kind of wiped it out. I let it wipe it out. And I
So
said,
was that
I'm
the
not.
inflection
I want to do
point?
something more. Yeah.
Yeah, the heart
It
attack
was. I
was
call
what?
it my 2x4 to the head.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Um,
it was the point of I'd been saying, I got to do something different. I was getting burnt out, and it just that I think I'd gotten messages. Well, like I said, her telling me that, and I'd gotten messages before. Hey, you need to be doing something that's more your passion, something that you really want to do. Versus, I stumbled into that business and developed it, and sold it, uh, but it wasn't my passion, and I had never been really doing my passion. And what I do now is very much my passion. I love doing it. I love working with people. I love the changes I see in people.
how old
So
were
yeah,
your kids when you
it took
started
that,
doing this?
oh gosh, I had, well, when I had a heart attack, I had a 2-year-old, and I was 52, I think, at the time. So
Yeah.
I kind of started out late with family. So I had a 2-year-old, let's see, two, and then she was 9, and then I had a 13-year-old, I think, something like that.
So that's a pretty significant time in a parent's life, as a husband, as a dad, as a business. Somebody running a presumably successful web marketing business, and then heart attack, bang, you transition into something new fairly quickly. Can you talk about what was required of you to get your mind right to go, I've got this sustainable thing that's paying for our lifestyle, and now I'm going to completely flip this on its head, like while having young kids, and build this whole new thing?
Well, it was. I mean, it was. It was a difficult. It's because it's that, it's that stepping off the cliff and having the faith that you're not going to fall kind of thing. It was kind of the go in my mind. And so yes, I had to do a lot of mind work. Well, and it wasn't probably the smartest time in the world to do it either, because what I always talked about with the OCD, it's really hard to even describe the amount of stress and the anxiety. And I always said the stress in our house was, I don't think you could have cut it with a chainsaw. It was that bad. Because and I love my daughter dearly, my middle child. I love both of them dearly, I should say. But the first child that went through she was vicious. She was violent and abusive, and she was 9, 10, when this stuff started hitting. But she became a demon at times, and we had battles at 2 and 3 in the morning. And I was like I said, I was in the doing the web design work and doing some consulting. And my one place I was doing, I was having to drive. It was about an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 15 minutes from my house. And I'd left many times with my wife holding our youngest in her hand and trying to hold off my daughter from attacking me as I was leaving the door, to go to work. And then getting a call halfway there with my daughter screaming at me that I better come home now or somebody's going to get hurt, and just, I used to say my mind felt like it was ripped apart because half of it was still at home, so worried about what was going on and how my wife was having to handle it, and having to try to think about work it was not a good time at all. I'd get to there, and I had to be an actor at that point of not showing them what was going on in the background with me, and still be able to function and do the consulting and work, and I did it, but it was very challenging, to say the
Don,
least.
when I think about OCD, I think about stuff you see in movies where people are arranging their desk in perfect 90 degrees, or they want they want everything lined up perfectly, or that needs to be put away, that door needs to be open, like that. Like, I have no idea what OCD is. It never would occur to me that it would have an element of violence or aggression to it. Would you tell me, us, anyone listening, like, what is OCD and how did it manifest in your kids?
Well, you're correct. You're correct in it is, most people consider it kind of an organizational thing, or you know, but
Washing your
it
hands
is,
1,000 times type of thing.
yeah, you know, I mean, it's, and it is that, but it's probably more so it is an extremely high anxiety disorder. And the way the principle or the thing behind it really is they they get the thoughts that just rampage, rotate over and over, obsess over these thoughts, and the thoughts are telling them that they should do something to to stop the thoughts. So with my middle child, it was washing hands, and the belief is that if I wash my hands and if I do it in a certain way, then it'll make the thought go away. And it does initially, but it just gets worse. You have to do more. You have to do it this way. You have to, and then vicious thoughts. For my daughter, used to get vicious thoughts of, if you don't do it this way, someone may die or get hurt or get ill. That was how bad it was. And she would wash her hands for hours. You know, when it got to the worst place, she would wash hands for 2 hours. She would take showers for anywhere to 3 to 4 hours. And the problem too was she had to do it a certain, and there was no real rule to it. It was, I always called it the most illogical logic there ever is, because there was no real rules. They kind of came as they came, but she'd have to like wash them in a certain way, and if you disrupted her during it, in the middle of it, she'd have to start over. And if anything disrupted her, and if she didn't do it the right way, she would, or if you disrupted her while she was doing it, the explosions would happen. You know, I used to call it the hurricane bathroom, because she would tear the curtains down, or she'd throw soap all over, then she'd try to slide and hurt herself, and she used to unravel the toilet paper and throw it in the trash can. And of course, I started out with the military mind dad. Not that I was ever in military, but I felt that way, because I would get angry, and then it would just be the two of us go at each other. And the toilet paper thing, this to show you how illogical this was. I didn't find this out till years after she was in a better place, but she said she thought all our bathrooms were on second floor, but she believed that somebody was able to get into the bathroom and through a screen and a locked window on the second floor and poison the toilet paper. So she would unravel it to get past the poison and throw it away. So you'd have this stack of toilet paper in the every day.
So
and of course that would just drive me,
Yeah, just letting that toxic or illogical thought be the dominant driver for whatever the action
Oh, yeah.
is. And so, to somebody with
The beast.
OCD, is that genetic, environmental? Like, does that run in families? Is it like, do you personally, as like dad, take some sort of ownership and like, I created an environment where this was like the...
Now don't put that guilt on me. I'm just kidding with that, but because that's what you do go through that in
Sure.
as parents. We both, my wife and I both went through that. What did we do? Especially my wife. Oh, what did I do in pregnancy? Did I do something wrong? Did I, and there is genetic sense to it. I don't think they truly know exactly, but there's genetics, there's environmental, there's a lot of different things, because there's a couple different, there's a lot of different kind of versions of it, but there's pandas and pans that are believed to be caused by different viral kind of things, viruses, or strep throat, that, And that's kind of where we think ours can, that's a sudden onset of it, which is what we ran into. It was one night, like a light switch, it came on.
No
And
way.
but yeah, you go through that again as a dad, as a mom, you go through that scenario of, oh my God, what it was, I like that, and but no, you can't blame yourself, because I don't think there was anything we did in childbirth or anything like that caused this. I think everybody probably has some semblance of this in them, because I don't know. It just I can see a little bit of a spectrum of it. Some people have it really bad, some people have it mild. Um, so yeah, I don't know if I could say that there's any conclusive way of looking at it and saying this is what caused it. We think she did have strep throat like about a month or so before that we think might have been the trigger of it. But yeah, and it is common to have uh, genetics that have two in the family, and that's what we came up with.
Yeah,
So
dude, I'm
yeah, because
reminded of the
when my
game.
second child did it,
Yeah.
what's that?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Don. Sorry.
Well, when the second one came along, it was oh my God, it was like, oh, not again. I don't know, I literally said to myself, I don't know if I can go through this again, because it was so brutal. And the second one wasn't bad, at least starting out. The second one, she went through some pretty tough stuff too. But that was a lot of that. The tough part of that was the medication that they messed up with her, and that threw into some psychotic stuff. So
The idea that everybody has this to some degree makes sense to me. And tell me if you think I'm tracking here, because the first thing that popped into my head was the game that we all played as kids, walking on the sidewalk. Step on a crack, break your mother's back. Right? If
yeah,
like, I guess the idea would be like, okay, I step on a crack and I think, oh no, like that now my mom's back is gonna break. Except for me, it's not like a real thought. Like, okay, that would be a messed up
yeah.
coincidence. But I guess is it fair to say that somebody with OCD might take that thought like way too seriously?
Oh yeah. Well, and that's you talked about organized, and I used to do a presentation on it. That I built this little uh, desktop. It was just a flat board that I put on the ground, and I had desk equipment on it, and I talked about how it used to really upset me. I'd have people even sitting in an office talking or something, and they I'd say, oh, you really have a beautiful and neat office, and they'd say, oh, yeah, that's just my OCD, and that would just blow up in me, because you have no clue. And in the presentation, I'd jump up on the desk and I'd kick stuff off, and I'd say, now that's what OCD is like. So it people tend to use OCD like, oh, that's my OCD, like a verb, or something, and that's not what it is. It's not. My daughter, my middle child, was not organized at all. In fact, she was messy. Her room was not neat and organized at all. That was not her problem. Her problem was uh, being dirty, and I say that in parentheses because it's not like our household was not a clean, neat. We had dust bunnies under the couch and on beds or whatever, so we were not a neat place. Her dirty was things were stained. Not stain's not even a good word. It was just dirty in her mind. It was contaminated, I guess, was maybe a good way to put it. And it was just, her thing was smoking.
Yeah.
And we don't know how she got that, because nobody in my immediate family or outside my family really were smokers. But oh my God, if she saw a cigarette butt in the street, you talk about a crack in the back. No, a cigarette butt, literally would plaster up against the wall, screaming and yelling, you know, oh my God, everything in this room has to be destroyed and cleaned, and it was. She used to do that at 11:30 at night. One time I walked by her bed and my pants leg brushed her sheet of her bed, and she went ballistic on me. Everything in this room has to be destroyed. She wanted first it started out being had to be destroyed. Then it got down to everything had to be scrubbed down with either alcohol or Clorox or something like that, and we had to really work and work it hours it took us to get her down to a place where we could get her back to bed.
Can you
Because we had
talk
at that.
Can you talk about I mean, every kid is a challenge on some level or another, and it sounds like two of your three were really outliers with respect to the amount of challenge that they, have to contend with themselves. But as mom and dad, I can't imagine the challenge that you went through and like working with each other, and then tell me about your relationship and how you manage such a huge challenge as partners.
Well, that was tough. That I always say, and I don't say this as anything bad towards my wife, but there were quite a few times we came this close to like the thoughts of divorce and
Yeah.
I'm out of here and all that kind of stuff, because it was so. But at the same time, we were very good tag teamers, and that helped. That tended to be a good kind of a good policy where, because my daughter tended to pick on me, screaming at me, you're not my father, I hate you, you're. She called me names and tried to attack me and stuff like that, and so I was usually the first in battle, and I would deal with it, and sometimes I'd have to hold her down, and that one was always a tough one for me, and my wife would at some point I would either text my wife or she'd come down and take over, and her energy was different, and it would help a lot of times bring that down. So it was, and we got to a place with her that uh, there was one place where she went way off the chart, and she couldn't touch anything. She couldn't touch us. We couldn't touch her. She really couldn't touch just about anything. There was only a few things. She got stuck on the couch, and you talk about something that tears a dad's heart up, a mom's heart up, is when your daughter is crying and or screaming, and you can't grab her and hug her and say it's okay, I'm right here. Sorry, I still get a little choked up over this thinking about it because it was just that dramatic. It tore my heart apart, to go through that and not be able to really help her, and be so that's what the tapping was, a place that we used, and we used it surrogately, which meant we tapped on ourselves for her, you know, because that's one thing. When you were talking about the energy and people coming into the room and changing energy, we share energy, and that's where you can use this surrogately for people, and we had to do that, and it would work. It would bring her sometimes down to sleep. But my wife would walk, if I was battling with her, my wife would walk out and do tapping for her, or vice versa.
What's status now? Like, it sounds like you've made a lot of progress. I'd imagine that the kids still, are dealing with this as adults.
Yeah, she's my middle child now is 20. I got to make sure 22, and she's the thing about OCD. It doesn't cure. It becomes, you bring it to a manageable place, and that's where I think both of them really are, is at a manageable place, because my youngest is now 15 and I'm teaching her to drive. Um, but it becomes manageable, and I think, especially my middle child, because she's had she moved out on her own for a couple of years and ended up having to come back because she lost her job. Um, and she still has, I'm going to use the word quirks, but she still has some things that bother her, but she manages them. She'll tell us sometimes, hey, that's really that's still kind of triggering me a little bit. I'm gonna go in here for a little bit, and so she'll get away from it, or she'll just work through it. She does some tapping. She got a little tired of tapping after a while because she would do it at certain points after a while, but you never used it when she was you never used it in front of her when she was in her worst place, because she had this demon voice that would come out and go, "Don't you use that EFT on me, Dad," kind of thing, And I was like, okay, let me step out. But yeah, they're in a much better place. They both went through a real journey, but I think it's really made them stronger out of it.
Mhm.
'Cause both of them to me are amazing kids. And the toughest part about OCD, or really any of these disorders, which I've worked with a lot of kids with different disorders, these kids are brilliant. They tend to have a, a genius mind in a way that, and in fact, what causes a lot of problems for parents, especially dads, I find this more. They think that the kids are kind of faking this or whatever, or well, they're really smart. They should be able to work through this, and they don't really get it that there's stuff going on up here that's that they can't help, that they can't do anything about. And so it's really can be tough. I've run into a lot of parents, like I say, more dads than moms, that end up fighting the partner, because they think the kid should just be able to get over it, and that's not true. And my wife helped me in that too, because I was kind of like that at the beginning stages of this. Oh, come on, this is, oh, seriously, you got to do that? No. And my wife had to kind of lay it out to me and said, you got to stop. You got to learn that we had to learn how to communicate and all that kind of stuff, and change all of that and come at it with a more compassionate way of doing it. And because it was not working to come at it with the same force that she's coming at me, all we did was climb the wall together.
That's actually a good segue into this question. A lot of times, people will say something to the effect of, "You don't get what you want, you get what you need." Like whether that's the universe or God providing for you, or whatever it is. If we were to take that position that you got what you needed as a parent with the challenge that your kids presented, and you've helped them overcome, how would you say you evolved as a person and a parent from day zero, the day they were born, to getting them to where they are now? Like, how have you changed?
Well, I still call both my daughters and my wife, as my greatest teachers. And it's interesting because, one of my mentor, now I haven't worked with her in a while. But when I was working with her during this time that we were going through a lot of this stuff, and one day I came into her, and I was just kind of in this really not good place, and she I don't know what she said to me, and I said, "I just wish we would be back 10 years ago when we were a family and everything was good and calm, and life was good." And she looked at me and she goes, "What the hell would you want to do that for?" And I went, "What?" And she said, "Let me ask you something. Have you changed in those 10 years?" I said, "Well, yeah, I've changed." And she said, well, have you learned anything out of those 10 years? And I said, yeah, I learned a lot. And she said, so why would you want to go back 10 years and lose all of that? I went, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And it's really true. And I've learned it more and more as I work with clients. It's kind of about contrast, and that's kind of I'm kind of throwing that out there, weird place here, but you don't everybody learns from experience versus somebody telling you to, I could read all the books, learn all the theories about OCD or any of the things in my life, but until I experience them, I don't really learn them. I don't really take it in. And not that I'd ever want to, I wouldn't necessarily want to go through that. And just like I wouldn't want to go through a heart attack, but it changed me and it led me to where I am now. And so did my kids. I now can be compassionate and understanding of when somebody comes to me and they're in that place. I get it. I really get it. And I can help them. And I don't mean to be egotistical about that, but I really truly have learned so much out of that from my teachers that I'm in a place where I couldn't jump 10 years and be here from where I was, because I wouldn't understand it. I wouldn't have a clue about how it works. But now, and it was a hard lesson, but man, and it's now helping me with the senior population, because we went through some of the same kind of stuff with my father-in-law. He had some really rough reactions to some medication changes that they did for his Parkinson's that made him kind of psychotic. And I was like, well, it's not that much different from what I went through, And so by learning how to communicate, my wife knew how to communicate with him when he was really up on the on the edge of the cliff, ready to jump, kind of thing. And so yeah, I've changed tremendously. I'm much more compassionate to myself, to others. I learned. My wife and I learned how to communicate before all this happened. We went to counseling for communication, and thank God we did, because it really helped us to keep that bond together. We made it through that stuff, and there were rough patches, and my wife went through depression afterward, in the middle of it and afterwards. And it just, for us, it was just seemed like there was one thing after another. We went through it for my first daughter, and we were like, oh, okay, we can actually sit at dinner and actually have dinner without explosions going on, And then my second daughter, it happened one night, and it's like, oh my God, and we kind of got through it with her, and then she had, like I said, some medication changes with my youngest, and that threw her into a psychotic place. And we had hospital visits and all kinds of stuff. It's like, I always talk about, there are days when I want to walk up and look up in the sky and go, WTF, okay, what else? Well, bring it on. What the hell? Let's do it, And I probably shouldn't have done that, because now I'm doing it with my father-in-law has all this stuff going on, and it's like, okay, I didn't mean that. I'll take that back, But we are, I think, now kind of in a better place, yeah.
That's great. You touched on so many things that are important to me. One being contrast. That's one of my favorite words. Applying it the way that Jerry and Esther Hicks talk about it is what makes sense to me, if you're familiar with them. And then
I listened to her. In fact, I was listening to her this morning. Every morning I'm listening to her.
I love her. And then communication and counseling. That one hits me. So I'm going to ask it to be quick, because I want to get to the rapid fires for the end. But improving communication with your wife is something that I'm actively working on every day, and I find that as my ego dissolves, I get better at communicating. And it sounds like counseling helped with you with communicating. Can you talk about some of the one or two of the barriers that you had to break down to be a more effective communicator with your spouse?
Well, we learned, I don't know if you've ever heard of the Mago therapy.
No.
Dr. Horval Hendricks, within that was the counselor that we went to. Like I said, I asked my wife to go counseling with me before we were married, because I was getting tired of relationships that would end and just really not good relationships, and I was tired of that, and I really liked her and loved her and wanted to make sure that we were able to stay together. And in the process of imago therapy, they teach a process called mirroring, where and you may be familiar with that. I don't know, where it's a process where the other person just has to mirror and they validate and empathize and all that with it. And we learned that process, and so it was. I guess the big thing was learning to be humble and, like I say, get past the ego and be able to let the other person be heard, kind of thing. That training really helped us, even though nowadays we've shrunk it down because it's a big process, because you have to talk and they got to repeat and talk and repeat and all that and validate and all that kind of stuff. And with kids and with all that we've gone through, we had to shrink that process down quick, and get to the point, kind of get to the point of it and get through it. And so, but even to this day, we still use that. And like I said, we may get into a little bit of argument and then go, oh, wait a minute, let's rewind here. Let's start it. You're not listening to me. Oh, okay. Well, hold on a minute. Let me, and so, yeah, we actually teach communication now. We do parent communication courses, and we're looking to adapt it into the senior population, based on the book How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. Really solid, good concepts in that book that we learn and use every day. How to respect kids' feelings by listening to them. Not trying to solve or fix or all that kind of stuff. And we use a lot of that. My wife started that out. Again, my great teacher. I love her to death. She's taught me so much, and the communication was part of it. And like I said, when I was dealing with my first daughter and all that, we'd just go at each other, and that wasn't working. So I had to learn how to communicate and not fire back at her, but learn how to respond to her differently so that she'd still go up a little bit, but not go off the roof, So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but it was like the humbling thing and the getting past the ego and being willing to really listen and be, compassionate with how you communicate.
Don, you ready for the rapid fire section of our chat?
Sure, why not?
All right. So
if my daughter came, with all I've been through with my daughter, I can't imagine you'd come at me with anything too tough here. So just go for it.
Okay. So what are 2 or 3 characteristics that every father should have?
Well, I think the compassionate thing, both to themselves and to others. I think it's very important to start recognizing emotions and recognizing and allowing yourself to feel those emotions. That's one thing I see it. Men are evolving more now and doing that, but there's still too many people out there, too many men out there that can't show their emotions, can't show their feelings, and you can't bottle them up. So I think compassionate listener. I'm kind of stumping now, but just being willing to be vulnerable. I think is very important in a relationship anyway.
Let's talk about fictional or non-fictional parent that you've always admired or liked, whether it be from a television show, someone from your life, or someone from a book that you've read? Who's a father that always appealed to you?
John Walton. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the Waltons, the show from the 70s.
No.
Oh, okay. It's a family with the grandparents. This is set back in like late early 30s, something like that. Walton's Mountain, and they have I don't know. I'm trying to think how many kids, like 5 or 6 kids, and the grandparents live with them, and but John Walton, the father of this, not the grandfather, but the father, he was just this. He would talk to his kids. He wasn't a big churchgoer, which I always said my church was the Church of the Holy Comforter, the one on my bed. But he just had this spiritual sense to him too. I think, kind of like my own father. My father was very religious, but he had a very more of a spiritual sense to him. Caring about others, giving of himself, all of that kind of stuff. And that's what John Walton was like that. And he'd talk to his kids. He was never abusive to them. He never really punished them that much. He would punish them, but he would talk to them and talk about things, and I just always admired that.
Let's suspend time, space, reality, and give you an opportunity to give a gift to every father on the planet. No limitations to what this gift could be, as abstract or objective or anything.
So kind of like advice in a way, or I guess is what you're looking for.
I've heard anything from a comfortable chair to patience.
Wow. I would think I would give them a clean slate from the past. Not having to take on what their parents might have taught them about what it's like to be a man or to be a dad, and let them start anew and try to go from the heart.
It's a really cool answer. When in your life do you feel the most love?
Oh, wow. When did I feel the most love? I would say probably where I'm at right now, to be honest with you, because my wife and I are finally getting to a place where we can breathe, where we actually went on a trip by ourselves for a long weekend kind of thing, which we haven't been able to do in 16 years because of all the stuff that we've had to go through, and even with her parents, it's been pretty tough, having to help her mom out and her dad out and stuff like that. So I'd say right now I'm feeling life is really feeling like it's coming together better, and I'm feeling and I'm starting to really take on Esther Hicks stuff. I really want to kind of go see her sometime, but I'm starting to realize getting outside of myself, I guess, in a way of seeing life bigger than what this human thing is, and that we create by how we focus. And I'm really, really working on that. And so, yeah, I'm feeling that. I think right now is probably one of the best feelings. And I'm 65. Damn it! Why couldn't this come like when I was 30? I don't get that. But anyway.
Okay, so I've got one more question for you, but first I'm going to quickly plug the Carrie Molina. She lent me this piece of art that's behind me. It's available for sale. I try to put local artists' work behind me to share what they do, and I'd love for you to tell anybody listening where they could find you, how they could connect with you, LinkedIn, website, Instagram, anything.
Yeah, we have all of those areas. My website is focusedhealthyfamily.com, focused with an ED, focusedhealthyfamily.com. We have a podcast under the same name, Focused Healthy Family Podcast, and you can get to that by focusedhealthyfamilypodcast.com. We're on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok. I think we do a little bit on. My wife does a thing called Ask the OT, which is helping people that are caregivers for seniors, whether they're professional or personal. She answers questions live on YouTube about 3 times a month. And like I say, we have tips, Tuesday tips that we give out. So all that's on the website.
That's wonderful. Well, we'll be sure to link those things into the show notes once we publish. And last question, Don. In the event this recording were to last forever and your kids listen to it, maybe your grandkids listen to it, maybe your great grandkids listen to it, what's a message that you would love to share down the generations of your family?
Wow, all these really big mind questions here. I have to come up, and I feel like I have to come up with something so just dynamic that what message? Just to I hope that they really get into each other, that they pay attention to each other, and not these devices, or not that they listen, and they have compassion for each other, and they love each other, and they really take time with each other. That's I love when my kids, we all get together. We do a game night about every other Friday, or a couple times a month, probably at least. And my kids are still pretty close, so they can come. I love the camaraderie, and we're not necessarily on devices. We're playing a game, and I hope everybody can do that. Any family can do that. Really be a family again. I think we're too much. We're not the old style family, that got together for dinners and stuff like that. I hope that we're still doing that, and loving each other. That's what comes to me right now. I should have practiced. I should have played. I should have looked this up, come up with a much more dynamic answer for you.
No, I think sometimes the simple things are the best things. Just being together.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.